So there you have it. Second weekend of the Rugby World Cup in the books, and it finishes here in Nice, where I've just watched England against Japan with what I thought was a pretty underwhelming performance, even though it's a bonus point victory for England. So I recorded my reaction a short while ago. That's what's going to be in this video, but you drop a comment down below, and in particular England fans, are you as disappointed by this as I am? I know it's a bonus point win, but I don't know, I was just hoping for more, and I explain why in the video. So drop a comment down below, like the video, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel. But let's get into it. Bonus point win for England. They are 2 wins from 2 in the World Cup so far, and yet I'm coming away from Nice this evening just a little bit disappointed. And I think that stems from the fact of what we saw this week combined then with what we saw tonight. And what we saw last week was a team reduced to 14 players, not playing well at all in the warm-ups, but being able to find a way to win against the odds and showing character and showing an ability and a resolve to get themselves out of a tough situation. They were able to problem solve. Whereas tonight, again, it was an England side that just struggled to fire a shot all night, and I'll get into the various different bits. A couple of the tries weren't great, the discipline wasn't great, but it was just underwhelming. And it's funny because actually before the game the atmosphere was really good. The England fans were loud. George Ford's name, when it got read out, was received the biggest cheer of the evening so far. And then after 10-15 minutes the atmosphere just fell a little bit flat, a little bit nervy. Japan kept themselves in touching distance or took the lead at one point as well, and it felt as if the game was slipping away. At that point in the second half, what did it get to? It was 13-12 to England when Japan scored their only points actually of the second half around 54 minutes. And at that point I thought, this game's slipping away from England. Now look, it didn't. In the end, they won by a pretty comfortable scoreline. And as I say, maybe a lot of England fans will watch this and say, well, you're being a little bit negative. You've got to look at it. They're 2 wins from 2. They're in a great position now to go through. They'll get to the quarterfinals and then we'll see what happens. And I do get that, but I think most of my disappointment is stemming from the fact of what we saw last week and then the problems we saw this week that they hadn't kicked on. They weren't able to really, it didn't feel to me like they were able to build upon that platform. And I think the best example of that is the attack. Now, if we look at the first 2 tries that England scored, what was it? A 5-metre line out close to their own try line that Japan had that they messed up. England stole the ball and were able to wrestle their way over. And then that second try where it kind of went back off Stewart's hand, hit Marler's head, Courtney Lawes picked it up and scored. I mean, you take the points that you get, but it's 2 of the worst tries that you'll probably ever see. And those are just 2 examples of the attack not being great. In fact, they're not really examples of the attack not being great. They're an example of luck. There are a number of examples of the attack not being great. And these are just the ones that I jotted down throughout the game. There are probably others that you might think of, but England did have an intensity to them at the start of the game. They went 3-0 up. They also had some good phases in the 22, but then they didn't score and it fell flat. And they weren't able to maintain that. They had an attacking line out at the end of the first half that you might remember where they kicked to the corner, everyone got behind it, messed it up terribly when Jamie George came round. They tried to look like they were setting up a maul but actually wanted to spin it off quickly. They knocked the ball on, they messed it up. They then had a charge down in the 22 at the start of the second half and they were able to put Japan under pressure. Shortly after that, it was a holding on penalty against them. You then had Marchant down the left-hand side where he had a 2-on-1 and he kicked the ball away. And I was sat next to Tim Cocker from Egg Chasers and he was saying he would never do that with Harlequins. And it was another example of England's attack just not particularly functioning. And then late on near the line there was a moment where they should have spread it wide. They didn't. They kept it in the forwards and they ended up getting a penalty against them once more. Now again, you might say that I'm being negative here, but I think England's attack is a major issue. And you know the reason that I'm most disappointed is because after last week I thought, okay, if they can use that and the confidence from that to come into this game and maybe show something in attack, if they can show an attack that is very slightly more positive or very slightly able to just be a bit more threatening, all of a sudden there'll be a step forward and we can try and roll with that. You can try and build momentum from that. I just don't really feel like they're going to get that from this performance. And I mentioned discipline earlier. I think particularly in the first half we saw, again, some kind of sloppy, ill-disciplined, poor penalties. The Johnny May one is the one that comes to mind immediately, where he changed his line, blocked off the kick. It was just a silly one, gave massive territory away, gave a penalty away as well. And then the final thing to throw in on the negatives, believe it or not, I do have some positives here, but the final thing to throw in on the negatives is just Japan weren't good at all. I mean, Japan didn't fire a shot. England had 60+% possession, they had 60+% territory, they dominated the game again, and Japan didn't really trouble them particularly, or not for prolonged periods. There were moments where actually Japan's attack did look good, but they never really put England under any pressure. So yeah, for me it's probably a level of disappointment and frustration really with the England performance. I did mention that there are some positives, and I still think there are. I thought Ben Earl once again was excellent. It's amazing to think that it wasn't so long ago that he was barely even in the England 23, and now so far after the Vunipola red card, I think he has played himself into just a brilliant position. He's one of the first names on the team sheet based upon form, I think. It'll be interesting to see what happens now that Vunipola has returned and came off the bench here, but I thought Ben Earl was good once again. Jamie George as well, putting in once again another shift. Now this is a positive and a negative, because he's getting through a lot of minutes, but as we all know with this England squad, there may well end up being concerns about what happens if he gets injured or if he's not able to maintain that throughout the tournament. You do feel like England are needing 70+ minutes every match from Jamie George. I just wonder if at any point that might become an issue, or maybe because they're in a relatively easy pool that they'll be able to rotate in these final two games against Chile and Samoa. We'll wait and see. A few things tactically that actually I thought were good, and there are a few things in isolation. It doesn't take away from the overall disappointment of probably where this team is, but I think when they kick to compete at the moment, England are looking good. It was something they were exceptional at against Argentina, and when they did it here against Japan, there were a number of occasions where they were able to keep hold of possession. That seems to be something that they have improved on, and I'd like to see them probably use it a bit more than some of the more aimless kicks we see, particularly when they have the ball in kind of the final third of the pitch, or in the opponent's half, and we see them kick it away. Kick to compete they've been pretty good at. The driving maul as well bit off chunks of territory, and the scrum was another one which certainly towards the end of the game really started to get on top. So it's not that there are no positives there for England. I think the disappointment for me is that there aren't the positive strides forward that I was probably hoping for after the opening match against Argentina. Just spoke to a few of the fans outside. Seems to be a bit of a mix. A lot of people seem to say, well, it was alright, it's a win, it's 2 from 2. Other people who are getting so frustrated with the kicks from hand, in particular actually in the second half, that was something that happened a lot. There was quite a few boos around the stadium. So as I say, let me know in the comments section. Eerily similar to the Wales game, wasn't it? Where it's a bonus point win for one side, but actually you look at the performance and you look at what you're probably expecting from them, and that's where the disappointment comes in. So yeah, I feel a little bit flat after watching that. It wasn't a great watch even here in stadium. I'd imagine the same for anyone watching at home as well. So I look forward to reading your comments. Also, very quickly, really appreciate everyone who I've bumped into out here in France who've said hello. I appreciate all the support I get on the channel. So if I do get an opportunity to say hello and say thank you, then do come and say hello, which has been really nice over this weekend in Nice. Let me know your comments. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.